This film was made as part of the Common Cause Research Project, which aims to understand how universities and Black and minority ethnic communities build collaborations. Each of these films tells a different story of how these collaborations might work. They range from long-term partnerships to short-term projects and events. The films are designed to prompt discussion and reflection. We encourage you to ask, what questions might be learned for the future from these stories?
Minding Black Histories, remembering, acknowledging and documenting contributions of Black poppies in the First World War, a digital storytelling project working with young people from a Congolese background. I'm originally from Lebanon, and my research looks at the relation between media and conflict in the Arab region. One of the research projects I'm involved in is called Voices of War and Peace, which is an HRC-funded project with a PI based at the University of Birmingham, and I'm the co-I on the project. I'm actually interested in looking at traces of the Great War in today's society. I did get to meet Miguel through a common acquaintance in Bothwell Heath, and he spoke to me about an idea he had about wanting to work with descendants of Congolese soldiers living in Birmingham, exploring with them the legacies of their grandfathers, their families, and how that connected to legacies of the Great War. Part of the Voices of War and Peace project, there's a research fund that basically allows researchers to bid for very small grants to undertake a pilot project, and if that works out, potentially it could become a bigger project. And Miguel had already a grant from the HLF to work with African communities and was considering putting in a larger grant to work with Congolese soldiers. So we thought that's a good opportunity to work on a small project, see how that goes, and then see if that can turn out into a bigger bid for the now and then theme of the Heritage Letter Fund. It had to go through the community partner before it went to the funder. Miguel saw it, wrote the sections that were relevant to him, signed them, and then we submitted the bid, we got the funding, and then we started working on the project.
What advice would you give to an academic practice considering some kind of similar level of community engagement?
Get to know the partners you're working with, choose them really, really carefully, think about who you want to work with, think about what your priorities are, what your community partners' priorities are, and only work with the people with whom you think, you can somehow come up with a joint plan that would be good for both of you. What was the struggle? Turned out there are young people of Congolese backgrounds, but they had no connection with the First World War. And so a part of the workshops at the beginning had to be about, let's talk about the First World War. But since their stories weren't relevant, they started working on who else do we know that we can, unveil the stories of. So they went to London and shot with a family whose granddad was actually one of the people enlisted in the war.
Some of the troops got so hungry that they actually were willing to take parts of a rotting horse and actually use it as their food.
So we ended up working on a film rather than a photographic exhibition. Of course, I had to contact my funders, get an approval to do that, because that's also a shift from the original output. But there was a good point in terms of making the film, because that would be something the Hub could use on their website. It's something that they can share. It's something that remains online beyond the actual physical exhibition. The last workshop only had 3 people. So Miguel came up with an interesting idea, is to get his family members taking stills of pictures back home that they sent him, and then we printed them, and then we had the young people sort of hold those pictures and take portraits of each other. So the workshops was about introducing them to video and photo techniques, and then they would go and shoot the interviews themselves.
I couldn't celebrate the World War I and II histories when I was a young person, because I was unaware of the major part that my grandfather had actually played in that.
Collaboration with community partners is very important for academics, because it's a really good reality check. It's all of a sudden academics just woke up, they're having to talk about impact. But there's all these words about co-design and co-collaboration. So by me writing the bid, for example, I would have removed some agency of the community partner because I've decided that this is what the funder wants to hear to get the money. Obviously, we hope that in many cases this fits with the community partners' agenda, that this is what they need to basically get their work done. But the reality is that funding schemes exist and there's specific guidelines and we have to write research questions. These research questions need to have objectives. So very, very tight sort of structure. For example, my community partner turned out he had trouble getting young people engaged in the project. So he suggested paying them a stipend. My funder wouldn't take it. We can't pay them. What was a surprise? The amount of people who are actually working on contributions of Black and ethnic minority people in the First World War. So we went from these histories being completely hidden, nobody talking about it, to in the Midlands alone, there's like tons of community groups working on this. And we got everybody together on something we called Community Day. And we started sort of the seeds of a network. As we were discovering these different groups, we funded Miguel to go and attend their events.
Was that an additional funding then? Was there additional?
No, that was part of the same
That was
project.
part of the project,
Yeah.
right?
We had budget for travel.
When was the project finished?
2 years ago.
Do you have a question you'd like to ask your collaborator?
I hope we do look at this in sort of similar way to think, right, this is probably was good in several ways, but in other ways it was, I mean, for me, the biggest challenge was it was too short of a time and too little of money to do what we aim to do. So for example, until now, Charlotte and I are working on a paper because we're supposed to produce an academic paper that basically looks at the collaboration between an academic and an academic partner. And you have to think, we've got no time. What was missed? There's something about putting artwork made by young people in a space and having loads of people come and visit and see it. We didn't have that. We didn't have these pictures, so we couldn't do the exhibition. There's a lot of things we wanted to achieve with this project that we couldn't, and I'm again with discussions with community groups to try and do everything that we couldn't do the first time.
If you are interested in finding out more about the project, please go to the Common Cause website.